All right, they say health is wealth, and I must say that we all know that to maintain good health, one needs wealth, and it is vice versa, if you ask me. However, in some cases, information and awareness is the wealth needed for health, and today is World Health Day, and shortly we will be bringing you more on how information of health or wealth you need to stay healthy on as we progress in our daily life. But again, I say welcome to another new month and an excellent afternoon to all our viewers. Sometimes I wish people can have a clip of what happens behind the cameras before we come live. But again, I say welcome again. I remain Kike Atanda-Owo, your convener on this platform. And of course, I have my co-host on the platform, Damilola. How you doing?
It's a beautiful day. Happy new month. Happy new month. It's a beautiful day to be alive here doing this with the green and the red. It shows you that Christmas is gradually coming in, and you can spot Kike's background. It says we are full-blown ready for Christmas. I think December is always a month, it's a happy month, and a lot of tensions are getting doused down. When you go out, companies want to wind up, they just want to merry, party. So on this note, I say welcome on your favorite show, the RTWK show, where we bring it real on the table for everything that you're going through. Just know that when there is life, there is hope.
All right, let's go straight on this day in history segment. With on this day in history segment takes us far back as at 58 years ago. We know, listening or watching the on this day in history segment on this day, I just felt exactly December 1st, 1964, the national parliamentary election was declared in Nigeria. What a good way to start the year. Stay with us. Let's get more on this history. We'll be right back. All right, many thanks for staying with us. Damilola, let me come to you quickly. I know that there's nothing much rather than reminding us of legacy and what actually took place 58 years ago. But what's your take thus far, connecting it to what is happening in Nigeria today after 58 years?
Well, after 58 years, the declaration of the parliamentary election 58 years ago, I think it was a good idea. Yes, we should always look for ways to mend and not ways to destroy. If they felt that the parliamentary election was good and it was going to solve some by-election problems, which is not actually the by-election, well, I think in the coming year 2023 we're all agitating towards February and March, and we're looking at it like, okay, whatever will be, but what will be will still be. That's what I have to say.
What will be will still be. I think for me the fact that this day was the day it was established, officially, parliamentarily, in terms of how elections do take place. And I like the fact that on this segment there are quite a number of information that comes to light that we use in educating our viewers. I think it's time for a quick message from our sponsors. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, going straight to today's conversation or discussion, which I feel deserves real talk. We are diving into the area of wealth or health rather, and today being the 1st of December, it's recognized international as World AIDS Day, and the theme for the year 2022, the theme for the year is ensuring equal access to treatment and prevention of services, as Nigeria joins the rest of the world to commensurate with the year's World AIDS Day. Health institution and of course experts also says that inequalities still persist in HIV prevention, testing and treatment services. And according to the Joint United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS, the country director and representative in Nigeria, Dr. Liu Zekeng, yes, that's the word, says that there are inequalities that continue to obstruct the ending of HIV/AIDS. And on the live show today to talk about these inequalities and of course other aspects of awareness in HIV/AIDS campaign is a prominent stakeholder in the Health Ministry of Nigeria. He is Dr. Ejike and the Senior Special Assistant FCT Minister on Health and Hospital Management. And I think it's important for us to quickly get his profile before we actually connect with him. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us while we are still trying to establish connection with our guests from our Abuja studio. I think it's important for us to manage time properly by treating our trending story. The first trending story that caught our attention today is that of the president of Liberia, George Weah, who congratulated his son, his past tense now, for winning with the US team in the World Cup. Dami, quickly, let me come to you. What's your take on this?
Well, I think for me it was sweet because I saw it and I felt like, okay. Then I was quick to bring it back to our Nigerian kind of setting, like, oh, the president of Liberia's son, Weah, is playing for the American team, which they are on the verge of victory. Now, if you were in Nigeria and the president went to congratulate his son, himself and the first lady went to congratulate their son at the changing room. So I snapped back like, if it was my country, what would be the reception of people? I think that the first thing would be like, we are suffering here in Nigeria. Your son is playing for America. But here is Liberia. The son is probably a citizen of the country. That's why he can play for that team. So it was good for me. The father is victory all around. So if it happens here in Nigeria, yes, we have a lot of Nigerian athletes who are playing for the USA, for different countries. Even some of our Nigerian footballers, they have different clubs that they play for. So whatever happens is win-win. If he's the son of a Liberian president, he plays for America, he's still a Liberian.
Okay, definitely I hear you. First of all, let me start by saying that when I saw the video, I saw the happiness on the face of this child, the footballer, and of course, I think his name is Timothy Weah as well, and of course, the father, who is George Weah, the current president of Liberia. And on the first note of my own submission, even listening to you, is the fact that I like happiness, I like how it radiates, I like how it's contagious, and I like how football have united us all, globally. And I'm happy with the son and the father that the young chap is becoming successful in the career of the, footstep of his father and all of that. However, what came to mind for me is the fact that I feel that, it's reminded me the address of Liberia as in Africa, and the fact that it's not from United States, it's from Liberia. However, I know there are many question marks on this video, and some of the question marks that came to mind is that, as far as I'm concerned, I asked myself, why should the son of George Weah, you know, the former World Cup player in the 1995, be playing for USA, was what came to mind, Damilola. And the fact that, you know, I felt that there are many questions as well when it comes to patriotism. What do I mean by that? Initially, I wanted to create excuses for him, in as much as I feel that my children have a triple or let's say double citizenship or whatever, and the likes and all of that. But I just felt that which was the angle I was coming from in terms of making excuses for him. But I just felt that, you know, perhaps before he became president of Liberia, also his son could have nationalized, you know, as a U.S. citizen and many more and all of that, you know. And then again, I saw that it's an African syndrome that, you know, that affects us all as leaders, or should I say as people, where sometimes we always want to we globally recognized with other organization or countries and likes, and I felt everyone wants to study or play football or pick a career abroad one way or the other. Just have that international recognition attached to your profile or career. So however, I feel that what speaks to me right now, you know, watching the video, is the fact that poverty, you know, when it is unfortunate. I feel this speaks poorly of us as a person, as a nation, and also in terms of our patriotism. That is why I feel that our way of thinking, you know, our mental way of looking at things, sometimes I feel that I cannot help but attach it to how people view certain things, especially when it comes to World Cup today. You know, is the fact that it's not about the World Cup tournament, if you ask me. It's also from a trainer like me, where my organization trains organization. I feel that, if you ask me, it's about ownership culture, and that is the angle I'm coming from when it comes to patriotism. I feel that right now, why should the son, yes, I'm saying this, why should the son of a former World Cup or world best, should I emphasize, player, you know, and current president be playing for another country? Yes, because as far as I'm concerned, despite the fact that my own children have they've neutralized with other countries based on birth, or, you know, their parents being an extension of another country and the likes and all of that, I just feel that I am quick to remind them as being a Nigerian, because I feel that flag needs to be, you know,
flown high. Needs to be flown high.
So this is the same question marks I'm also putting in this area of life. And I also feel that, why are we not using our own talent to develop Africa? Because that is the angle I'm coming from. However we look at it, we might claim that yes, we want collaboration and the likes and all of that. Why I think that we should check our patriotism claim. I think I have said enough on this, but because I know that we are about to connect to our guests right now. But patriotism is very key in Africa, and hence the reason why we parents will have a lot to do when it comes to guiding our children as we forge ahead. But again, many thanks to our guest, Dr. Ejike Oji, for connecting with us. It's been an interesting time knowing that technology has taken the center stage of stage today. So while we're trying to connect with you again, I say many thanks for doing this with me. How are you doing today, sir? Let's start from there.
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great. Many thanks, sir. Many thanks. Many thanks. And many thanks for the impact that you are making in the world, especially today being the World AIDS Day and all of that. I think I'll start by the theme. You know, if you listen to me at the beginning of the show where I was talking about the theme, I was talking about the theme for this year being ensuring equal access to treatments, prevention and services. I think I would like to ask by saying, how does inequality affect the accessibility and availability of HIV/AIDS today in terms of care, in terms of treatment, and of course support for people living with this disease?
Yes, thank you for that. Like you correctly said, the major theme for this year is reducing inequality and eliminating HIV/AIDS. The inequality that comes with it is the different ways people access the healthcare system, and then they are on different layers. The ability of somebody to have what we call health seeking behavior is also linked to the rights that person feels that he or she has. In our constitution is enshrined that everybody has a right to health, has a right to life, and has a right to reproductive choices and all that. But occasionally it is impossible for people to appropriate those rights, because if you look at the issue of health, there are three solid A's: accessibility, availability, and affordability. On those three counts, even though HIV testing is regarded as free, so to speak, but accessibility is usually a problem because without proper good risk communication, a lot of people will even avoid going to be tested because of the taboo. Even though the taboo overlook on HIV has reduced tremendously compared to when it started. When it started, it was like once you are labeled that you are HIV/AIDS positive, that means death is the next thing. But you see, the world has moved on because of medical science. The world has moved to the point that HIV is almost like a chronic disease like diabetes and hypertension. So people don't really need to hide it. It's to come out and be able to assess the treatment. And then if you also look at the availability of testing and treatment, it's still majorly donor driven. The donors are still doing a lot. So for sustainability, we're looking forward to that. There will be a point that we should be able to do our own testing and also treatment of our nationals. So the inequality comes also in the way we approach health systems. If you're a big man or a big woman, you go to a hospital, the chances of that you'll be well attended to very quickly, wherever it is in Nigeria. But if you're a poor person or low-income group person, there's always this mentality of helping a less privileged person in the society, so you don't completely get what you need. And then if the facilities are also not available in places where people can access it, remember the 3 A's I mentioned, accessibility. If the nearest health facility where somebody can get access to testing and treatment is quite far, you've already denied that person the right to health. So those are some of the inequalities that we're also seeing. And like I said, in terms of health seeking behavior, if you don't give people the appropriate skills, ability, and knowledge to be able to seek health when they should, you have also denied them their rights, because you can't say because they didn't come that is their fault. It is your responsibility to inform them so that they can know the right health seeking behavior. These are some of the issues that account for the inequities and inequalities in HIV treatments. And in fact, any other disease entity.
Okay, so I would like to ask my question from this point, because there's a disparaging news out there that is not sitting well with me personally, and I'm sure that probably other Nigerians will have a reaction to this news. In one of the reports that I saw, it says that the new HIV infection gradually declined from 103,404 in 2009 to 92,323 in 2021. Showing that Nigeria might meet the United Nations target of ending HIV/AIDS by 2030. Another report contradicted that and saying that there's no end to the infection by 2013, as currently we have about 1.8 Nigerians living with HIV. How does this correlate? Which are we supposed to believe, and is there an end in sight come 2030, sir?
Yes, it's a very interesting narrative. I can tell you it's not only in HIV that we have problem with data. I'm a family planning advocate. In fact, we just came out from a meeting. The National Population Commission launched the new document on the strategic management of our population developed by them after the president launched the National Population Policy. We've always talked about consensus meeting for us to have a data consensus meeting so that we can look at all the data and agree on which one and how to use the data to make meaningful decisions that will help our healthcare system. Data has always been a problem, and I'll call it data management. And data management starts from how do we collect the data, how do we analyze the data, and then how do we use the data. And then in terms of data use, you could either use a national data or use a decentralized state level data or regional data. So there have always been that confusion, and this is one of the major conversations that are going on around in the reproductive health space. And that's why the census that we're going to have coming next year is going to help us document at least the baseline for some of these things, so that moving forward, we should be able to know how to manage data. I wouldn't want to comment which one is correct and which one is not correct. Some people say it's even 1.6 million. And like you said, you mentioned the data that you have. But the important thing, overarchingly, is shown that there's a steady decline of number of people living with HIV/AIDS in Nigeria, or the new infections coming out in Nigeria over time, which is a very good news. Our prevalence rate, remember, was up to 5.6 at some point. Now we're about 1.3, 1.4, which is a very wonderful news. But coming back, that we need to have critical, correct data, because that will inform, like I said, decision making by managers of our healthcare system. So it's still a paradox. It's a consensus data meeting for the data that we have, disparate data from all other places. Or after the census next year in April, we'll be able to sit down and say, look, we must find a way to collect data that is correct, so that even for advocacy purposes, for me that is an advocate, if you take data that were 1.8 million to National Assembly to advocate for more investment in that area, and maybe the legislative aid to the Senate President had just also looked at the data that he has, and is saying 900 and something, then the person will come and say, don't listen to those people. They are crying foul, this and crying wolf where there's no wolf. It's not true. The data is 900 and something instead of 1.6 or 1.8 million. So that also causes some level of discomfort for people who make these decisions. And then when we have scarce resources, you need to find a way of prioritizing where you deploy the resources for the betterment of the world, of the country. So these are some of the issues that we have. And that's why we're also bringing it to the public space, that we must find a way of managing data. Nigeria is one of the very low resource countries in terms of research and data collection. And we must ramp up that, because at the end of the day, any money spent on research or situational analysis or whatever documentation you have done well, it saves a lot of money, because it gives you the tools for you to plan properly for your population.
Thanks for that insight again in terms of the reality in Nigeria with regards to the burden of those living with HIV/AIDS, and of course throwing more light on the data collection and of course the survey found in terms of those who are living with HIV/AIDS in Nigeria today. But moving away from that, according to the recent United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime Studies on HIV prevalence in Nigeria prisons, which states that about 2.8 of people in prisons and 9% of people who are injected with drugs, which is the PWIDs, and of course those who are living with HIV/AIDS. And I know that some of your submission has actually given us the insight about those who are living in HIV in terms of the survey or the numbers of people living with that, even though we have challenges today regarding data. But these figures are much higher than the 1.4% prevalence rate among the general population. So I would like to ask you, sir, we have the National Agency for Control of AIDS, of course NACA, and many of other agencies that are attached to HIV/AIDS today.
Control.
I must ask you, what achievements have they made thus far when it comes to what I just shared regarding this?
The prison services.
I think I've already underlined the fact that Nigeria has done tremendously well. Remember, at some point, our prevalence rates national was about 5.6. We were one of the highest, should I say, that country was one of the countries with the highest HIV prevalence rates. I think the only country that we were less than at that time probably was South Africa. But when a massive national survey was done, and this speaks to the issue that I had talked about before, the way we collect data also makes us look bad when probably things are not as bad as we think. So that proper data collection on HIV brought down the fact that our HIV prevalence wasn't as bad as we thought, and that's what brought it down to the 1.3 or 1.4. So the work the NACA has been doing is in that direction, and I can say we'll give them kudos that they have been able to work assiduously with partners and then also local entities like subnationals. Even though we have NACA at the national level, we have SACA at the state level, and they are also a collaborative effort, and they all have a joint work plan which they develop, and then everybody goes back to implement their own based on the contextual issues around their regions. So by and large, I would say NACA has done very well, even though some time ago, years ago, there was a time the funding from Global Fund or so, there was a lot of flack in terms of accountability. But I think we've gone through that, and they are moving on. So we believe that if we continue to encourage them, and then also if the government make sure that we put in key performance indicators guiding the work that they do, and say, okay, this year is 1.3, we are giving you a responsibility to make sure that next year it should be 1.2 or even less. And then even tie it to the work of the head of the organization. For you to keep your job, this is the minimum we feel that every year you should reduce the prevalence rate. That way it will be, putting guardrails around performance, so that key performance indicators are put into place. It's not just being there and working. But like I say, by and large, the number of people living with HIV/AIDS in Nigeria have been dropping. Or rather, the number of people who have the new infections have been dropping. So it's also very important for us to continue in that track. But however, what we want to do is to see the trajectory of fall to be steeper. And then everybody is singing, yes, we're going to meet our 2030 objective. Yes, it's not good for us to rest on our oars. For us to meet, we have to diligently, continuously work to make sure that happens.
For that submission, I can't help but, bring in COVID-19, and I would like to kind of quote one of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, which who is a chief Terry Ford from the global perspective, based on what he said regarding the reports that he actually collated, indicating that the world is alarmingly, off track in reducing new infection and will I say mortality issues or mortality rates right now. With what he has shared and with what he has collated thus far, I cannot help but ask about what part did the COVID-19 pandemic, play in the control of the HIV/AIDS scourge?
I wouldn't really say that that there was a direct path. Maybe there is. I can't say for here. But I know that I was in Abuja. I was part of the Abuja response. I was the chairman of the medical subcommittee of the ministerial expert committee to reduce, to prevent and protect people from COVID-19. The only thing I will say is that, and when something new comes, we tend to forget the old things. And I'm sorry, it's not that I'm denigrating our women folk. When a man marries a new wife, all his attention is on the new wife, and then the wives that are there before probably will start complaining. And then I think it's same thing. COVID-19 actually took away a lot of resources, I would say, or attention, most importantly, from HIV/AIDS. And now COVID-19 is somehow on the decline, if I will use that word, but it's still anywhere. Any place you still have it on planet Earth, there could be a resurgence if there is any of the distant mutating again. But for now, there's a decline globally. People can go around their businesses in most parts of the world. So it is very important that we bring attention back to endemic diseases like HIV and even Lassa fever in a place like Nigeria, even cholera. So I'm delighted that your network is thinking about bringing attention to this. Yes, COVID-19 took away resources from all other areas that attention should have been paid to. But I wouldn't know and give you accurate fundamental information as to how much that it took away, that the percentage. But everybody knew that COVID-19 drew away resources from so many things, not just in the healthcare sector. It drew away resources, and then some economies collapsed, and then the world is just coming out of it now. But it's good that we keep talking about it, and that's why I'm excited that your your network is bringing that to bear to let people know that HIV is still there, endemic, quietly there. If we remove our attention, there could be an upsurge and resurgence of the disease.
Yes, Doctor, sir, as a consultant surgeon, a pediatrician, and the senior special assistant to the FCT Minister on Health and Hospital Management, I'd like to know your reaction or your take on the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, who has claimed that we have only 10,000 resident doctors left. And of course, they also gave a statistics that about 800 Nigerian doctors have emigrated in the last 8 months. Also, they have complained bitterly about funding for doctors training, that it's not enough. What's your reaction towards our resident doctors living here and seeking a greener pasture, knowing that there's really no welfare package for them or motivation for them on ground? How do we cross these lines? How do we cross these borders, sir?
Yes, the should I say the migration of our health workers didn't start today. Some of us have been talking about it over time. And then for me, like I said, I'm a population person. If we look at the reason the immigration is happening, it's part of the, unless we look at it from a broader picture, we'll always be missing it, and we probably look at it on a siloized way. Why are the young people leaving the country? It's not just doctors that are leaving, professionals, other engineers, should I say nurses. In fact, a lot of young people are now training to be caregivers to be able to go to Europe, especially UK. The major philosophical issue is that we're in a population crisis. And I'll tell you why. About 15 years ago, some of us started seeing the sun, we started shouting. Let me give you a typical example. In 2006 or so, I was invited to Norway by the Norwegian government to be part of the African reproductive health leaders to be able to work with the government of Norway for them to craft out their policy for intervening in Africa. By the time I sat down with the international development ministers at that time, the first question he put to me, Dr. G, how come every day 13 commercial sex workers come into our country from Nigeria? Thereafter, the International Office of Migration at some point said that out of every 100 African migrants crossing the tempestuous sea of the Mediterranean to Europe, that 14 of them were Nigerians. When our president came into power, President Muhammad Buhari, remember in his first tenure, first outing, about 2 years or so, he brought back plain loads of Nigerians, young Nigerians from Libya. And about 3-4 years ago, there was a migrant attack where 44 people were killed in Libya. 9 of them were Nigerians. Who were those Nigerians? They were young Nigerians who were unhappy about what was going on in the country. They can't find jobs. There are too many. 72% of our population right now is under the age of 30. So, and they are largely unemployed, largely unemployable. So there are 2 sets of people that leave the country. The first set that normally leave is what I call global citizens, based on the resource they have within them in terms of human capital development. And those are professionals, doctors who can use their skills anywhere in the world, engineers who can use their skills anywhere in the world, nurses, same. So those are the first set of people who start leaving the country, and they started living in droves. I'm a graduate of medicine in 1980. As I speak to you now, 75% of my classmates are outside this country. It didn't start today. Now, after that,
start today. What came just to keep our people, for our people? If we're saying about 10,000 doctors left in Nigeria, knowing that at any point we can have emergencies and we need a lot of practitioners on ground, and it's not even looking attractive to foreigners to come here to work. So how do we keep these people?
Yeah, this is that's where we have to sit down and look at the data and then start looking at how else can we rework our country. So what I'm trying to say, what I'm laying this emphasis on population, we are too far many for the resources that we have to take care of ourselves. So we must reduce our fertility rate. That's the number one thing. And then we can now start investing in healthcare, in schools, appropriate and relevant schools, ease of doing business, and then also make sure that we have an environment of civility, environment of fairness, justice, and then also where there's some level of security. It's the young people who have not given enough that are attacking us. So I'm here. So the problem here is multifaceted. Until we look at the fact that the resources are not enough, there's no way we can, should I say, give the doctors what they need now, because the resources aren't there right now. They're not there. Unless we retool the way we do our things to be able to make them happy.
All right, many thanks for that elaborate insight on what you've just shared. But, I can't help but still bring you back to the youth, because I know that, with all that you've shared thus far, I wish that we can actually put things in context in terms of the youth. I feel the youth are the most affected in terms of the age group in the world, especially the age group of 10 to 24 years, based on the research that I made, which I feel that they are more vulnerable to the disease at hand, moving away from the population that you have actually, emphasized on, especially globally. But in Nigeria, which is constituted by about 70 million Nigerians that are being affected right now, based also on the research, knowing that most of the things that we see online sometimes can be questions. That is the reason why I'm actually putting this in code. So you've spoken about the huge population, but sir, students only frequently see the signboards of AIDS is real in university campuses. Let me bring you back to fall about the recent strike that happened for 8 months, and many of the females went into prostitution. We keep it real on this platform, especially when it comes to those certain period when they were out of school. I must ask you, what is the global, tactics to fighting this scourge amongst the youths today? Because I feel that the youth are more, prone to these challenges that we are talking about.
Yes, once you have a burgeoning population, this is something that has been properly documented globally. Let me give you a simple example of 2 countries, China and India. A lot of people say, China is doing so, they have a population, so why shouldn't we do well? India, same. As a child, when I was in secondary school, 2 of my teachers were Indians. These people had PhDs, and they came to Nigeria to teach in secondary schools. Why was that? There were too many, and they didn't have enough. China, 50 years ago, was a poor country. What did they do? The important thing that they did, these 2 countries, was they looked at their fertility rates. It is not the population that is important. It is the mix, where you have a youthful population and the fertility rate is high. There is nothing you can do. No matter what you plan, it will not work. So what India did was to say, let us peg our fertility rate to 2, 1 couple, 2 children. Then China said, 1 couple, 1 child. And they consistently, over 2 decades, 20 years, followed that. But they didn't stop at that. There are 5 deliberate steps they took to get to prosperity that we're seeing right now. The first one, like I said, is fertility control. Our fertility rate now is 5.3. The global average is 2.5. After they took care of that fertility, they invested massively on healthcare. The reason why we have a youthful population is that the women lose their children. The infant mortality in Nigeria is one of the highest. So a woman will say, let me have 10 children, perhaps 2 will live. But things are getting better a little bit. So out of 10, 5 might live. So we are having more children than we even want to have by the women. So if we have a good healthcare system that will stop those children from dying, the women will now have the instinct that, oh, my children are now living, they will go for smaller families. The third one is the children we've already born, the ones that are already here. Let's invest in them. Appropriate, relevant, and accessible education that will make it possible for them to be hired by people who want to set up factories. Even if they are not hired, they can hire themselves. And then the next one is of doing business. Once you've done this, you make sure that these people, you make the environment easy for them to plug in and do their business in a good way. Then finally, like I said, environment of civility, fairness, accountability, transparency, and equity. That way, Nigeria will transform this youthful population to a progressive, prospective country. So these are things that have been done in other countries. It's not magic, it is science. If we do not get it right, it will not happen. Let me give you an example. This last portion I talked about, making the environment equitable. Mexico, the intangible wealth of nations, which is not tied to the resources you have on ground, is tied to democratization and all those things I have talked about. Mexico is $35,000 a year. Across their border in America is $418,000. What is Nigerians' own? Nigerians' own is $2,680. The reason is those countries have pushed human rights to a level where people feel uncomfortable and do their best for their country. If you touch any American anywhere in the world, he will tell you I'm an American. And he knows that America will spend $10 million to come and rescue him. So these are some of the things that as a country we should start paying attention to. And it's a collective thing. It's not just pointing at the government or pointing at anybody. It's every Nigerian's responsibility. And this is the kind of things I would like our president that are going to come to start talking about. Those are the things that are going to make us
Doctor,
grow.
sir.
If we do not do it, we are not going.
Doctor, sir, can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you.
Yes, as the chairman management committee on family planning, my question is on family planning, sir. I know that in Nigeria, abortion is illegal, except if you're using it to save the mother's life. And in Lagos State, about a few months back, our Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu tried to raise the abortion bill, and some Christian bodies and some individuals felt that it wasn't necessary, it wasn't appropriate. What's your take on this, sir?
Incidentally, this is an area that I have worked over for 2 decades. I was the country director of IPAS for 12 years. We pursued the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act with 30 women organizations and other partners to get that passed. Abortion is something I always say Nigerians are doing ostrich hiding. A few years ago, in some states, even in Lagos, a maternal death review was done. It showed that 55% of the people who were dying before delivery were dying from abortion complications. When you input during delivery and 42 days after delivery, it came down to 45%. So my dear sister, anything that is killing, if you have 100 people dying, 55 of them are dying from one particular ailment. Don't you think you should pay attention to it? So my question is, if we are talking about religion, if a girl has gone and had sex and then got pregnant and in any way goes to terminate it, because at times we see doctors and nurses, when patients come with abortion complications, they look the other way. If it's God that we are professing, when you lie, you have sinned. So this is an area I'm very emotional about. And that's why, as the country director of IPAS, I work with partners. We shifted post-abortion care from doctors to midwives to be able to save the women that are dying from abortion complications. And that's why I decided to invest my time and energy in family planning, because I liken the abortion. Anytime I do a post-abortion care for a patient to save her life, what I have done, I'm actually mopping the floor while the tap is open. And one of the key drivers of women going to quacks is the law. It's been shown that countries that have very liberal law on abortion, abortion didn't go up. It didn't go up. But what happened was abortion-related deaths came down very drastically. Our close-door neighbor here, South Africa, that's what happened in South Africa. During the apartheid regime, they had very strict abortion laws. But you know, the whites were getting abortion when they wanted it. They paid gynecologists under the table. They gave them safe abortion. The blacks didn't have that money. They were dying in thousands.
All right, many thanks Many thanks for that submission. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. But before we go, I would appreciate if you can answer this question in a minute. The world was able to actually to brace up with vaccine on COVID-19 within that 18 months where we're globally affected. There was a lot of funding globally by vaccines and all sorts. Why is it that the world did not actually replicate the efforts when it comes to AIDS? Can you actually answer this in 1 minute, sir?
I will call it lack of equity. Even in the vaccine production and the distribution, there was a lot of inequity. It's the same thing. If HIV was killing people in the West, there would have been a more aggressive attempt. See what happened in COVID. COVID was killing more people in the West. What happened? Like you said, within 18 months, a vaccine was produced. But what happened in the vaccine distribution? The same thing is inequity. Most countries could not get it in Africa. And then in fact, a typical example, the European Union was actually fighting England, because the vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine, was put in the UK, the Oxford University.
Apologies, sir, I have to interrupt that line of thought. Again, many thanks for all your submission thus far and enlightening the viewers and, of course, us on this platform. But quickly, I would like to touch on the last trending story. These are stories that bind us as Nigerians, as family. And the second trending story that caught our attention is that of the IGP that denies knowledge of court verdicts. Damilola, let me come to you quickly. What's your take on this in a minute?
It's a perpetual act for Nigerians in the corridors of power when they begin to have some chaos and some brain problems. It becomes something they claim or they oblige that they were never informed. I think that this story didn't even start today. It was a court ruling on one of a police officer who actually filed against his how would I put it now, his unjust dismissal from the police, and the court actually required that he was being reinstated, which the IG, maybe I would say, flouted, or probably the way he said he didn't get the order. So it's been on since 2011, if I'm not mistaken, and it has just been a pattern of our Nigerian politicians come senior men in the corridors of power. So I hope that, well, the IG is defiant to the court. The IG should go and cool off for 3 months.
Let me start by saying that this case has been on since 1991, to be precise. And I think that I would like to put it out there, knowing that I'm an extension of a police officer. Yes, because my father, or one of my father, is a police officer. So there are good and bad officers. Let me put it out there. Let me emphasize on that. So this is a typical Nigerian excuse for failure and lack of competence, if you ask me. The law enforcement and, of course, the judiciary system, I believe that should have synergy, knowing that I understand the nitty-gritty of how this police officer and the likes works. So when an old IGP claims ignorance, for lack of a better word, in terms of the court verdict, I ask myself, who then wants to uphold the law? Who then wants to enforce the law? These are the challenges that we're facing today in Nigeria. And I keep it real here on this platform, regardless of whatever affiliation or what this thing that I have with any organization or personality, or even being a family member of any organization. So I just feel that this case is not the first, and there are a lot of hundreds and one cases of such nature that either should have been exonerated by someone or should have been put behind bars in terms of the criminal act that was exhibited. It's simply evidence that the break of synergy in the administrative functions of the police and the courts is glaring to the public right now. And this particular case is that of the dismissed officer, for those who do not understand what we are talking about, who has been reinstated by the court, a case of 1991. And of course, exactly 31 years ago was when this case actually took place. So this is exactly the, lives are being wasted by decades length, if not entirely to death. Some people could have been there and they could have lost their lives. I'm asking in pain, why? By which way will the IGP truly saying that he's unaware? Then we have a huge systematic problem, which is what I want to emphasize on the platform today, which I feel that reasonably can it be solved by IT? I believe yes. I feel that some of the things that we still carry on in most organizations today is about human power. Can we actually limit the human power and actually embrace IT to the fullest in terms of how the other developed countries actually do things, since we are really quick to copy them, but we only copy them when it suits us. So when you look at at the immigration today, when you look at the police department today, and of course the security agencies have access to some database which helps to fast track processes. So this can be eliminated, if you ask me, if you in terms of delay, in terms of flimsy excuses that are that they are unaware of by the IGP. I just believe that God will help our country, God will bless Nigeria. Come 2023 February, I hope those who are watching us right now will do the right thing by voting a visionary leader into the corridor of power. On this note, I think this is where we draw the curtains of the day. Remember, today is December 1st, and we are in the season period. Please put a smile on somebody's face and remain kind to one another. Bye now.
Give, share, love. It's never enough.